coming up a lot more during what we've seen here at Gamescom is the presence of spice. So I want to talk a little bit more about that.
Talk about the spice, yeah.
Two different types.
So yeah, in that game's video footage, we saw that spice affects you, but what is it exactly? Just knocks you out, or what? I guess they're going to show us.
Types now, flower sand as well as spice. How do you harvest that? What's the difference between the two?
Yeah, so a part of the kind of mechanic of the game is drawing people out onto the sand where that sandworm is, making their lives a little more risky, a little more dangerous. Flower sand is this soft sand. It's mentioned in the book.
Oh, we saw this before.
The Fremen like to pitch their tents because it's the softest place to sleep. It's kind of this very fine-grained sand you find on the most exotic of beaches.
Or Arrakis.
Yeah, or Arrakis in this case. It's very fine-grained sand, and in the game you need it as a resource for crafting. So you can go out there, you can harvest this flower sand by hand. It takes a little while to harvest a lot of flower sand that way. Or you can use this really cool tool we have called the static compactor. And when you fire the static compactor at the ground, it kind of takes all the sand and lumps it together in this big pile.
Oh, okay.
Harvest straight away.
That's cool.
That sounds like something that makes noise, though.
Yeah, it does, right? And when you make a lot of noise on the sand, you start to attract the sandworm.
Uh-oh. Yeah, we saw this earlier. Our doofy worm. For whatever reason, the worm in this particular section looked a little goofy. There he is.
So these are kind of the mechanics you use for harvesting flower sand. And then later
that
on,
particular angle, because I've seen different angles of that worm, and he looks fine. Is that one particular angle looked funny?
Giant spice fields on the sand, and you kind of harvest in the same way. You can harvest by hand, you can harvest with a static compactor, and of course, you want to bring, to harvest the most, you want to bring a sand crawler, dump that on the surface, and use it to suck up as much spice as possible. And naturally, all of these things take place on the open sand, and the sandworm always comes.
Is there an effect from being around the spice for too long?
Here we go. That's what I wanted to know about.
Am I inhaling the spice? What is happening to me?
Yeah, so just by virtue of being on Arrakis, you're inhaling a lot more spice than you probably would if you didn't live on Arrakis.
Factual, yeah.
And we see that in the films as well. Happens in the books. And so yeah, as a player, if you stand around on a spice blow too long without proper protection, you start to inhale too much spice and it gets into your bloodstream, and that can lead to, let's say, certain effects on your character in the world and in the game. Yeah, the idea of these visions that Paul has, I think, is an interesting thing. We're definitely exploring this kind of idea in the game. What it is and what it means, I'll leave for the players and their imagination, and hopefully one day they'll find out.
Okay. So we're gonna have spice visions.
Now that I harvested all that spice, though, what's the main usage for it?
Spice visions.
The personal use, like why am I out there harvesting and risking my life for it?
So we should get money from spice,
sure.
right?
I mean, in
Solaris.
The Fremen use spice for everything. It's something that became a huge part of their culture. And in the same way, the player also starts to sort of find multiple uses for spice all the time. You need spice residue for fueling some of the generators.
Yeah, so I talked about this in some of my videos. Spice in the books is used for actually making like plastics and all kinds of other items that the Fremen use it for, ropes and all kinds of stuff. So it wasn't just for taking and eating. They used it for everything.
In the base, you start using spice to craft almost anything in the world. Like some of the higher tier gear in the game really requires spice as a key ingredient. Use it to pay your taxes to the Emperor, because otherwise.
Wait, I have to pay taxes in this game too.
This is how we claim a sub thief.
Can't escape it, man.
Can't escape those taxes. I mean, you can. You don't have to pay them, and then you get killed by the Sardaukar and try to fight. But that's an option you have.
Okay.
And then of course, if you want to go into the Landsrad, spice is kind of the primary currency of the kind of political infighting that's happening between the major houses, and you can take a large role in that. And of course, you can sell it to make a lot of money.
So spice, it's everywhere.
Spice is the backbone of everything.
It really is. Another thing that we saw in regards to spice, or even like touched on in previous episodes, was abilities as well. Is there anything you can share about the connection between spice and abilities? Yeah, so as the player's blood gets saturated with spice, you can imagine how abilities might be altered by being able to see just a little bit into the future. And so, we have some of those effects in the game. I won't, again, spoil too much of it, but yeah, it will
do like a time jump view.
I'll take that. That was an answer.